Go ahead.
Okay, welcome to the first Amicitia Clarinet Extravaganza. My name is Diane Barger, and I am professor of clarinet at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And joining me in this endeavor is my Amicitia duo partner and BFF, professor of clarinet at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, Denise Gainey. Since March, we've seen so many wonderful and innovative informative online webinars for the global clarinet community. And so Denise and I partnered together to create our own offering for clarinetists of all ages and for music educators. And I think we have a really great weekend of events planned with many terrific guest panelists for our first Amicitia Clarinet Extravaganza. We thank you for joining us for our first discussion of the weekend on the topic of first impressions, how to successfully apply to college, and hope that you plan on tuning in to our other sessions scheduled for this exciting weekend.
We'd like to thank the wonderful Jessica Harry, who's our Director of Operations of the International Clarinet Association, for her help with the Amicitia Clarinet Extravaganza this weekend. Thank you, Jessica. And I also want to say happy birthday to my BFF, Diane, who is spending her day celebrating the clarinet on her birthday. So thank you for that. Yay!
Thank you.
We are so excited to share some thoughts with you today about applying to college, which is literally a life-changing choice. There are so many things to consider, so many options, and no one really ever tells us how to approach this momentous decision. So before we begin, though, just a reminder to please type any questions or comments that you have for us into the Zoom chat or on our Facebook Live feed, and we'll look forward to answering them.
All right, so high school years. So we're now going to just talk about entering college as an undergraduate. We're going to cover graduate school in a little bit. By your junior year, you should really start digging into your college search. Application deadlines fall between early November and January, so you want to start your search as early as you can. In the fall of your junior year, do some preliminary college search preparation and perhaps create a file and a spreadsheet to manage your college research, noting the application requirements, deadlines, etc. Prepare for standardized tests, ACT, SAT, as those test results often help you receive financial aid to the college of your choice. Visit as many colleges that interest you as you can. Most especially, reach out to the prospective clarinet professors at these schools and introduce yourself. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. By the fall of your senior year, you should have narrowed down your list and are starting to send in your applications. Stay on top of all your required forms you need to complete, such as the audition request and financial aid forms. Remain in touch with the prospective clarinet professors at your colleges of your choice throughout your senior year, and just don't be afraid to ask specific questions about their clarinet studio and various opportunities at their university. They're there to help answer any questions you have. And just make sure to thank anybody who wrote a letter of recommendation for you for your applications.
That's important. Good. And once you've chosen which schools that you're interested in attending, make a list of their specific application and audition requirements, including deadlines, to keep you on track because they can be varied. Some schools require a pre-screen audition prior to scheduling an in-person audition. And if this is the case, you want to record your video in the best possible quality as possible and dress professionally. First impressions are important. Every school is different, so be aware of the different requirements and expectations for each school. There is not a set number of schools that you need to consider, but at least 3 to 4 schools would be great so that you have options. Consider maybe your dream school, and also have a safety school in mind in case one of your dream schools is already at capacity and can't accept any more clarinet majors. Consider the size of program that works best for you. Some people do well in very large programs with lots of competition. Others prefer a medium-sized program with more opportunities for leadership earlier in your degree program, and some prefer small programs with a more individualized approach. Find the best fit for you. Do choose a program that will challenge you to grow into your potential. If you could create your perfect college, what would it look like? What is important to you? Think about location, distance from home, size, type of school, musical opportunities they would have for you, and all things like that. And consider numerous aspects when looking for a program.
So Denise, I'm curious, when you were searching for an undergraduate school, did you know where you wanted to go? Did you apply to a lot of places?
I applied to two schools because my private teacher taught at the local university and I loved him, but my heart was set to go to Florida State. And so I knew I was going to go there.
Yeah, same thing with me. I mean, I actually, and this is something for I think young students to consider. If particular universities that you're interested in offer summer programs, whether it be a week of master classes or a band program or even marching band program. I know that, yeah, my top choice was Florida State University, and for the 4 summers before I went to school there, I went to their honors music camp, and I knew that's where I wanted to go, and they happened to they were giving out some 4-year full scholarships, after the session was over. And so at the end of before my senior year at band camp, I got a scholarship to go to Florida State. I didn't even have to audition. So that was the only school. So I didn't have to start auditioning really until I got to graduate school. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's different for everybody. But I think the more that you can take advantage of the opportunities that the schools you're interested in offer, the better.
Well, and I think the important thing about that is visiting the campus. I typically find when students walk on campus, they know right away if this feels like home to them. And if they take a lesson with a teacher and they feel really inspired, or they sit in with a band program or a theory class, you just know. You might have an expectation that you think a university is one way, but you get there and maybe you don't feel like you fit in like you thought you would. And so that's why it's so important to visit those campuses and take lessons and interact with students. And I would say asking the students who are in the program their impressions, ask them why they came to that school, is one of the best things. They're paying money to go there, so they're going to tell you the truth. So go find those people and talk to them, and also get to know and build relationships with the professors, maybe the band director, the orchestra director. And I think it really helps you to get a broader picture of what you're getting yourself into when you choose a school. And so like what Diane did is fantastic. And we do that here. I know UNL does that as well. Many universities will have those summer programs, or even honor band programs during the year, or events. Go to all of those that you can, so that you get to visit different campuses and interact with those people. It really will pay off.
Or, like clarinet days, like you do your symposium, I do Midwest Clarifest, but since neither one of us can probably do that this year, this is the venue that we're trying out. And so people get to know us a little bit too, even though they don't get to see our campus. You get to see my home studio, and you don't get to interact with my students. But I find that my students are my best recruiters when the prospective students come on campus, and I make sure I try to connect them with my students so they can talk about the classes, the different teachers, and as well as how things run in the clarinet studios. So I think that's really, really important.
Events happen all over the country, so just check
Yes.
universities.
Yeah, it's all over. But, and again, one of the most important things, and I find that some young students don't do this. Now often it's because they're not studying with someone, so they don't know necessarily to reach out to prospective clarinet teachers. Those that are studying with someone as a high school student and studying with a clarinet teacher, usually their clarinet teacher, says, "Oh, go check out so and so at this university." But if you're not taking lessons and you're searching for a school, it's so important to reach out to the prospective clarinet teachers, because really they're going to be like your mom or dad, your surrogate mom or dad, because it's a different experience than taking a class like a theory class, and theory professors are great, don't get me wrong, but they don't have that one-on-one connection weekly, like your respective clarinet teacher will. So if at all possible, doing your junior, senior year, again, visit the campus and actually reach out to the clarinet professor and ask them if you could take a lesson. Even, just a half hour lesson, and meet with them and chat with them. And I would also suggest that you offer to pay them. I, for one, don't accept that, but it's just a considerate thing to do. That if you ask for a lesson, always say, what is your charge for that? Generally, if you're being recruited, they're not going to charge you, but I just offer that because some might. Okay. I remember Mr. Marcellus, of course, charged me for a lesson because he was Mr. Marcellus, so, and I was happy to pay that. But, so anyway, just remember about professionalism and always offer that. But also, just look into visiting and sitting in on an ensemble rehearsal or some music classes so you get a feel for the program. Most everybody will certainly encourage that and love to have a prospective student come in and sit on the class. You just have to make sure you contact someone at the school to set that up. But your applied teacher is so very important. They will be working with you and mentoring you during your entire degree, as well as helping you go on to graduate school or helping you get your first job. Choose someone that you feel you have a really good connection with, not just someone who inspires you by their playing. That's important, of course, but you also need to make sure that you have a connection with them. If you have a personality that clashes with them, it can be a frustrating experience. So it's really great to kind of get an idea about that before you commit to a college. There is more to college or university than just the school. That's very important. But as Denise was saying, you're going to be living in the town for 4 or more years. So make sure you like the area and the opportunities it provides. I can't tell you how many times people will come, to Lincoln, especially for graduate school. I get a lot of local people and Midwest people, so they have a little bit better idea of what the Midwest is like. But, I think some graduate students who are coming from the East Coast, think, okay, Lincoln must have corn stalks on every, corner with a cow next to it. And they come to Lincoln and they're like, oh my gosh, this is such a great city. And it really is. So, and other cities are like that too. You might not know what a particular school's location is like until you go visit. And there's a lot of opportunities that cities will provide, especially with local orchestras, transportation, things like that. Do some research on the music program and be able to discuss why you want to apply to that particular program or school. Sometimes I like to ask that, what drew you to the University of Nebraska? Reach out again to the clarinet professor via email and introduce yourself. And remember, this is going to be your prospective new teacher's first impression of you. So I'll just say this, an email is not a text. And we all are really good about texting. And I don't write Dear Denise in a text. I just text her, right? Well, but an email is very different, and an email should be very professional. And I'm sure our panelists will talk a little bit about this tomorrow afternoon in the professionalism discussion. But it needs to be said here because I know Denise and I both get this a lot, where we will either be addressed by our first name, or we don't get a Dear Dr. Gainey. We just get not even a hello. Sometimes we'll just get a question, and sometimes not even a name. And so I have to look at the email and I'm like, okay, I don't know this person. They didn't even put a last name. So you want to write, Dear Dr. Gainey, blah, 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 whatever you want. And then a nice little salutation, kind regards, Benny Goodman, or whatever your name is. And in that email, in that introductory email, it's really great to give your prospective teacher a little bit of an idea of your background. What have you been doing with your clarinet? Do you currently study? Have you been involved in Allstate, etc.? And tell them why you're interested in studying with them at that university. What are your goals? And definitely ask any kind of questions that you might have and just start a dialogue. It's very telling the kind of response you're going to get. Okay. And, I know that Denise and I do our best to answer people right away and thoroughly. Sometimes that's not the case. That's another kind of area that you can think, do I want to study with this person who maybe doesn't reach out to me after, a week? Okay, or two or more. So that's going to actually help you make your decision too, because again, you want this kind of relationship between you and your primary teacher to be one that I can go to them and I can get an answer within reason. It may not be instantaneous because we're busy, but and as well as is the student, but still that says a lot, I think.
It really does. The teacher's going to be your biggest advocate, so you want to make sure it's a good advocate. So, all right, auditions. Auditions are stressful. We all have been there. We all know that. So it's really important to get lots of rest the week before, eat well, practice slowly and carefully. Try to choose music that you know will show your strengths, not just to impress the committee with the most difficult music that you can find. Typically, music programs will request about 2 pieces of contrasting styles, but check for specifics. And if you're not sure what to choose, look for posted literature suggestions on the school's website, talk with your private teacher, or email the clarinet professor, always a good idea. You'll also be asked to play scales and sight read, and possibly play orchestral excerpts. Make sure that your instrument is in really good working order and that you have several good reeds ready to go. And this is especially important if you're traveling to another place in the country where your reeds may play very differently. We've all been there too. Oh. Don't warm up too much prior to your audition. I see a lot of students do this, and then they're tired by the time they get in there. Use that time to breathe deeply, to focus on a successful audition. See yourself being successful. Swab before you go into the audition room, because nothing is more frustrating and distracting than to get water in a key during an audition performance. But if it happens, life happens, deal with it. Just play like you mean it. Keep on going and don't let it throw you. While of course you want to play your very, very best, know that the committees aren't necessarily looking for perfection. They're looking for potential and teachable spirit. That's always the most important thing. We know you're nervous, right? I would also tell you when you walk in that room, greet everyone. When they ask you how you're doing, say, I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you? Don't tell them, I'm scared, I'm afraid. Act your way into being confident, right? And show them that. I think that's important too. And then thank them when you walk out of the room.
Very good, very good. And I think you mentioned this. If not, we're going to mention this again, but I'm just going to say it now. And I think you mentioned this, Denise, but dress appropriately. I am amazed whenever a student walks into the room and they have jeans on and sneakers. And to me, that tells them that they're not taking this very seriously. And so you really want to make sure that no, you don't need to wear a tux or an evening gown, but you just want to wear something that's performance attire. Okay, I wouldn't even say church attire because people wear jeans at church now. I think nowadays, so that little phrase doesn't work anymore. But again, that it's first impressions, and unfortunately, how you look sometimes is an impression. And of course, we're going to be more interested in how you play, but that is a huge impression. The other thing that I would add to what Denise talked about is the repertoire. And I know that we all usually have our repertoire requirements listed on our websites. I find that, again, sometimes the younger, less experienced players that are first starting out who maybe don't have a private teacher will use a rose etude that looks like it has a title, and some of the books they'll actually have, Adagio non troppo as the title of the piece, and they'll use that as their solo repertoire. And I always have to say, I'm sorry, that's not a solo piece. That's an etude. And so, really make sure, and if you're not sure, just email the clarinet professor. I think that's the best thing to do, is just to say, hey, this is what I'm considering playing. What are your thoughts? And that way you cover it, and you don't get there and, whoa, you don't meet the requirements because you didn't choose an appropriate clarinet solo.
And don't feel bad to say that you don't know. It's really okay. You're coming from high school. You're not going to necessarily know all the things
Right.
they're expecting of you. It's perfectly fine to ask. We will not think less of you. We'll be grateful that you asked.
Yes, it's much more important to ask. I always prefer, even my students are like, oh, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm like, please bother me. I'd much rather you understand something than go a whole week and then ask me because we have a lesson. It's the same thing with this. Don't be afraid to reach out. I think we're all very, very willing to answer questions of our prospective students. So again, in-person auditions are best, but many schools accept digital auditions, especially now. Many of your schools this year may actually require asynchronous videos. So again, if you're in that situation or you choose to submit a digital audition, again, dress professionally, okay? Record in a space with good lighting and acoustics. Such as a church. Try not to record in your bedroom. Try to think about what your background is, and again, just make sure you have the best acoustics that you can. Check your mic levels, all of those things, and listen back so you are giving the best quality that you can in your recording. And then speak clearly and confidently in the video. Be ready to discuss your career goals and why you want to be a part of that particular program. And just practice what you say in front of a mirror to build some confidence. Okay. And it's okay if you stumble a little bit. I mean, heaven knows Denise and I are going to be stumbling all weekend during these sessions. And that's okay, but just try to plan out some things that you want to say, and that'll help you be a little bit more prepared. After your audition, thank the committee. Sometimes it's a committee of the woodwind professors or a select few of them. Sometimes it's a band director in the room with the clarinet professor. Just follow up with an email, especially to the clarinet professor, and maybe the other people, and let them know how much you enjoyed meeting them and that you hope to be a part of the program. Again, that really says a lot about you as a prospective student, and it's very impressive. Once you've made your decision, do the professional thing and write to the professors of the schools that you did not choose, and just thank them for their consideration. Because, especially if you're looking at an undergraduate school, you may actually decide to go to this school that you're rejecting for graduate school. So you don't want to burn that bridge. Okay, write to the professor of the school that you do choose, and let them know of your excitement to join their studio. Sometimes I don't know that someone has decided to come to UNL until I get notification from admissions saying, oh, so and so paid their fee, their entry fee. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that. So I always email, are you coming to UNL? So just make sure you let people know.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. Well, and finally on this, my favorite quote that I always love to share with my students, the student you are is the professional you will be. Thank you, Cliff Mattson from Florida State.
Yes.
Every experience to move you closer to your goals, whether it is be performing or teaching, music, technology, whatever it is. Be on time, be friendly, be prepared, be professional. You will build many connections during college that will greatly impact your career, so you want to make those connections wisely.
Yeah, before we talk about graduates applying to graduate school, there's a question in on the chat. Do you have a list of pieces that you recommend for auditions? Definitely for undergraduate, I like to give something like, because we want to hear a variety. We don't want to hear just lyrical playing. We want to hear a little mix of lyrical and technical. So something like Weber's Concertino. I mean, boy, I will hear five of them sometimes in an audition season, and that's fine. And you can always cut the lento section out to make it a little bit shorter, because usually auditions are around 10 minutes. Or the committee will just cut you off, and don't take offense. But anything like that, Ferguson four short pieces, that alternates between something lyrical and something technical. Even the first movement of the Saint-Saëns Sonata, or the first two movements of the Saint-Saëns Sonata, that has some nice contrasts. Denise, do you have some repertoire that you
My
suggest?
So Hindemith Sonata, I like to hear, just to hear contrasting styles. So the Mozart we'll hear many times throughout. I've heard Spohr concertos, any of the Weber pieces. But for high school, I love to hear Weber Concertino, because it tells me everything I need to know about your musicality and your technique and all the potential that's there. Um, and I love to hear Mozart. I love to hear those, standard classical pieces are great. If you're an advanced student, you've been studying privately, come in with Stravinsky three pieces, fantastic. But remember, play something that's just going to show off the best of what you do. Don't worry so much about bringing the Nielsen concerto in to play for us. We don't need to hear that for an undergraduate audition, right? We're just looking to hear something that you can come in and play beautifully and well, and that's what we need to hear. So.
Yeah, and I guess I would also say that, yeah, those are all great pieces. I just, until you're really, I mean, we all played Mozart. I mean, I played Mozart when I was really young. But, I play Mozart a lot differently now, of course, because I understand the style. So, same thing with Brahms. Sometimes I have a hard time hearing a Brahms sonata in an undergraduate audition, because they just don't understand the style. And unfortunately, the third movement of the first sonata is in that contest and concert solo book. Not unfortunately, but sometimes I'll hear it and it's like, wow, yes, it's easy rhythmically, but boy, if you don't understand Brahms stylistically, it's maybe not the best choice for an audition. So I guess I would just ask you to consider that and talk with your teacher. Now, there's another, question here posted. Do you have any advice for students that have never had private lessons on how to best prepare for auditions? Denise, I'll let you start.
And I have several of those here in Alabama, and I would say to reach out to the college professor and ask, could I take a few lessons with you to help prepare for this audition? I've done that many times. I'm always happy to do it. And I think you'll find many college professors will. Ask if you've got anybody locally that you can take lessons from would be great, just to help you get an idea. But the big thing is get in contact with the teacher that you want to study with at the university, and ask them for some advice. Even if they can't give you a lesson, they can kind of guide you in what you should play. Possibly you could send them a video and ask, could you give me some feedback before I submit my audition? Especially in the time of COVID, that's probably more realistically. And there are lots of opportunities for online lessons right now because of COVID. So many teachers are out there. Choose wisely. Find someone who realizes that you're gauging, kind of going toward a certain program, and tell them what the requirements are, and have them guide you to prepare that audition. So those are some things you could do in the time of COVID that would help. But first and foremost, reach out to the professor that you want to study with and get some help from them.
Yeah, so ditto from what Denise said, but I also want to say that I find that some of the least prepared material are the scales, and also correct fingerings. Sometimes I get an E major scale that sounds like a chromatic scale because, they're starting with they don't know to start with the right E because of the F sharp, G sharp, because every clarinetist's favorite low E fingering is the left, with maybe the right C key down, because that's what we learned when we were in fifth grade. So again, those students who maybe have not had lessons have some of those unfortunate, what I call high school habits, and don't really know some of those details, but you can learn them from practicing your scales. And generally, there's a requirement of, at least, have memorized up through four sharps, four flats, major scales, and arpeggios. And also with the clarinet, I find that some students only do 2 octaves for anything E, F, F sharp, or G. And I always say, can you do the 3rd octave? And then it's like, so just make sure you prepare for those things. And again, like Denise said, the number one important thing is to reach out to the prospective clarinet professor. They should be willing to help you. And if they don't, then that speaks volumes, right? But I think you're going to find that most of us clarinet professors out there really want to help our prospective students.
They do. And, I'll just tell you that don't, if you come in there and you don't know these things and you've already played an audition this fall and you think, oh my God, I did those things, don't feel badly. You will learn. We're there to help you, so don't feel badly. I'll tell you my one funny story. I won't mention where I was teaching at the time or anything, but the funniest audition I ever heard was, and I kid you not, a student came in and played the 3rd clarinet part to Beat It for me. Yes. And it was because they didn't know. And so that's why we thought this would be great, just to try to help people, because you don't know unless somebody tells you. So never feel badly. So it goes back to the Maya Angelou quote, is when you know better, do better, right? Sort of like that, a quote. But so now that you know these things, hopefully that's going to help guide you to go in and have a much more successful undergraduate audition, which brings us to
graduate school. So at this point, the clarinet professor with whom you will study is of utmost importance in your decision-making process. I don't care if you're doing, music ed degree or a performance degree. Well, I suppose music ed, obviously you really want to make sure that you really respect the music ed program there, of course, but you're still going to be studying your primary instrument. But if you're going for a performance degree, and especially at the doctoral level, this is the professor who's going to be working tirelessly to help you get your first job, and who will be your strongest supporter and advocate during and after your degree program. So you have got to choose the right person, okay? Establish communication well in advance with your potential graduate clarinet professors, and schedule visits again to take a lesson with them. And talk with some of their current graduate students about the studio and about the program. Again, I try to set my current students up with some of my prospective grad students, and I think that helps tremendously, because I can't answer some of those questions about what's it like, in terms of academics. Well, I can answer a little bit, but about specific classes and about ensembles and things like that. And it's so much nicer to hear from a peer about those situations. Also, I think what's really impressive, and it's not required, but I do think it's impressive, bring a CV to your audition, as well as a repertoire list of works that you've studied and performed. Again, it's not usually requested, but it's really impressive to the committee who will be listening to your audition.
Yeah. So important. And I would add, for undergraduate as well, we always ask for a CV to know what they've done. And so get someone to help you with that, because that's another thing that we're not trained to do typically when we're in high school. And especially at the graduate level, it's very important. But I would say even at the undergraduate level, get some help with that. And again, if you're not sure, ask your teacher, ask your prospective teacher, ask your band director for help. There are a lot of people who can help you with that. So that first impression is, again, professionalism. All right. So for graduate school auditions, you'll most likely be asked to perform about a 20 to 30 minute audition that may include 2 to 3 orchestral excerpts. And in the case of doctoral programs, often you'll also have an interview portion of your audition where you'll talk with the audition committee. So you want to be able to talk comfortably about the music you prepared for your audition. Be able to talk intelligently about the composer, the history of the piece, and its form. Also consider other compositions that you want to learn in the next few years for graduate school, because I think having a wish list is really impressive and it shows that you're knowledgeable about any holes that you might have in your current repertoire list. Also, be able to talk about what your strengths are as a player, as well as what you want to improve upon.
Yeah, we at UNL, we have a pretty intensive doctoral. We don't, the master's level, there's no interview. It's a 20-minute audition, but at the doctoral level, it's a little bit longer because they have to submit a written writing example so we can see how they are as a writer because they're going to be writing a document. But we also, after their playing portion is done, we sit down and just interview them and talk with them to see if they're comfortable talking about music. And it's very telling when you get this deer in headlights look sometimes that the students have not necessarily been trained or been thought or been trained to think about actually talking about music. And it's so important because that's what we do all the time, right? So, and then also, I know Denise talked about this, but this idea of, what kind of repertoire haven't you done that you really know you need to do and want to do? You should have that bucket list. And if you don't, start making one. Because I even got asked for, and now we're stepping ahead after school. I got asked in my interview for my job, what pieces are you excited to play that you haven't played? And I was just like, boo! And everybody was like, oh my gosh, she's so, awesome. She was able to, boom, right out of that, out of the bat, talk about all these pieces that she's excited about playing. I also want to hear in a prospective student, what do you think is really great about your playing? What do you feel like you can do really well? And then what do you want to work on? What's maybe a weakness that will become a strength? And I think we all just have to think about that in our own playing. If you asked me, I'd be able to tell you right now, but we're not talking about me. So, but I think we all have to think about this as artists, and especially again when you're going on to graduate school, especially going on to study with someone, we want to know what it is you think you need to learn, and that helps us know that, yep, I'm going to be able to help you with this. Okay.
To that,
Yeah.
the student you are is the professional you will be. So do those things to set yourself up to be a professional. So to go to
Yep.
that step for the job, right?
Exactly. And again, stay in touch with your prospective clarinet professors as you make your way through all of your auditions at the graduate level, especially when you start receiving any financial aid or GTA offers, because it's almost a game, and you sit and wait to hear from all of your respective schools that for the GTA announcements, and I know it's a waiting game. So just keep in contact with your various clarinet professors and just let them know where you are in the process. Once you make your final decision, again, first inform the professor you're going to be working with. He or she will be thrilled, and thank them for their time. And then those schools and those professors you will not be working with, just make sure to reach out to those clarinet professors, thank them for their time and attention during the audition process. I think we all put a lot of time and effort into audition season, and think about building bridges at all times, because these clarinet teachers are going to be your colleagues someday in the profession, once you graduate with that degree. So you want to make the best impression you can so they remember you in the best light possible, not like, oh, that was that student who just completely never told me they weren't coming to my school. So again, just act your way into the professional you want to be.
Right. Amen.
Amen, sister. So, there's a question. Do you have advice about funding for graduate schools? Yeah, find some. No, I mean, and especially now, um, I'm afraid our all universities across the country are going to be going through major budget cuts. And I am sure that is going to be found in some graduate scholarships and GTAs down the line. Like we used to be able to offer almost anybody an out of state person. We had what's called an Edgren fellowship, and that covered at least the out of state tuition portion. And we could, without an assistantship and no work. Now we have, I mean, a handful literally in the college to hand out, and that's just because of budget cuts throughout the year. So as far as other funding, I mean, I think looking for outside resources, because in terms of funding at most schools, it's usually based on a graduate assistantship. Sometimes some schools do have financial assistantship available without any GTA work. So just, I mean, I think you just have to research that in those schools and then just look for outside opportunities from some other organizations to find other funding.
Yeah, you can also get financial aid if you're a full-time student at graduate level, so that's a possibility. And there are special scholarships that are out there. If you check with the financial aid program at your university, there might be one that is for people with two left feet, and they've specially designed for a certain community of people that they're trying to help. And so you might see if there's something that you fit into. One of my recent graduate students got one for African American women. I can't speak. African American women pursuing a music education degree. So, or a degree in education. So she was able to get that specific money to help her to add to what she was doing. So those things are out there. We may just not always know about them, but the financial aid program at each university should have a person specialized. They have a huge book that contains all of these possibilities for grants and special scholarships, and they can help you locate those. Along with, there are music guilds typically are
Right.
in communities that you can go to that offer special scholarships or competitions to earn those scholarships. So there's always a way. And then on the side, we've all worked jobs and things like that on the outside, which is tricky, but it's worth doing it. Sometimes it's tricky. It's like putting together a pie and you get pieces from all different, sources sometimes. Maybe you don't have everything covered by the assistantship, but you're able to find other ways. Perhaps you go to a university that like in Texas, where I did my master's degree at North Texas, tons of private students. So I had 40 private students, along with being a graduate teaching fellow at North Texas. So, and that's an opportunity to gain lots of experience. I know it's a lot of time, but those are ways that you can supplement your income to help support you get through that degree program.
Yeah, usually if you're on an assistantship, they ask that you limit any extra hours that you work, just so you're not going crazy, because you are getting paid by the assistantship. So you just have to check with that with every school. But some schools, like I know one of my master's student actually applied. She did not have any kind of fellowship, but she applied for her second year for a university fellowship that was not tied to an assistantship, and she got it. So, there are sometimes, once you're in the program, always look to see if there's any kind of internal scholarships within the university that you can apply for as a current student. Sometimes those are available too. There's a question: is there a difference between an MA and an MM? Masters of Arts, usually I see that like for dance, usually an MA. We don't have an MA, we have an MM. You've got the MA.
We have a Master of the Arts in Music Education.
So, okay, so it's tied to music ed. Do you have a Bachelor of Arts that's tied in music education?
We have a bachelor, yes. Yeah.
Okay, and see, like we have a Bachelor of Arts, you just have to declare a minor, and it could be like music tech, but if you're doing, we don't have a BA in music ed, we just have a music ed degree. So I think it depends on the program. Like my doctorate is actually a DM, Doctorate of Music, not a Doctor of Musical Arts. That's just the way Florida State um, did it. But most programs are DMA for a performance degree or a PhD in music ed.
Right.
Jessica, does it have anything to do with dissertation, the MA?
No, not that I know of.
Not that I know of either. And usually there's not a document unless, I mean, there's, if you're doing a master's in theory or
Yeah.
history or musicology, sometimes there's a capstone project, but generally you don't have a paper until you do the doctorate.
Right. There are master's thesis for theory and things like that, and sometimes for music ed. But for ours, the capstone is student teaching, and for performance would be recital. So,
Yeah, and the DM versus the DMA, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just, again, some schools call it one thing, some schools call it another. So, um,
I see
well, Denise,
Claire.
huh? Say that
Christina
again.
is here. Hello, Christina.
Hi, Christina. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Art. Ian
Hey.
Robinson. Hi, Jean. Um, so, are there any more questions?
So glad that you all joined us today.
Yes, thank you so much. And if you have any students that or know of any young people who are, wanting to apply to college, please show them this video. It'll remain up on the Facebook Live, and we'll eventually put the Zoom recording on our Amakitia YouTube channel. Um, but Denise, is there anything else that you can think of?
If anybody has any questions, also don't hesitate to leave it on our Amakitia page or email us at theamakitiaduo@gmail.com. We're happy to answer. You don't have to be coming to UNL or UAB. We're just trying to help people do a better job of getting out there, to audition successfully and achieve their goals.
Yeah, there's so many great programs out there with great people. And just, I think the biggest thing is just don't be afraid to reach out. You're not going to be a pest if you send several emails. I'd much rather someone send some questions than be, wondering what's going on. Yeah.
Another resource that you would have would be your music education. There's like your NAFME, the National Association for Music Education, would be a great place. They have some documents that would help you prepare auditions. And the International Clarinet Association as a great resource. And we're doing more and more things to help younger students and students going into the university programs. So check out clarinet.org. And we'll be talking more about that with Jessica later on.
Yay! And if, we might as well plug this too while we're here. If you're a young student or you have some young students, middle school through college, and they're not currently an ICA member, through the end of December, you can join the ICA for $10.
$10, yeah.
It's insane not to do that and see what a great resource that is.
Yeah, it will open your mind so much to what is out there in the clarinet world. And you'll start building a new network, which is great to help in the future.
So just go to www.clarinet.org and you'll see membership, and that's where you can register.
Right.
So please spread the word
Yeah,
about that.
I'd
Yeah,
love to have you all.
yeah.
Great. Well,
Thank you so much, everybody.
this has been great. Please stick around for the rest of the weekend. We've got lots of great things planned as we help celebrate Diane's birthday.
Thank you.
Clarinets rule. Yes.
Okay, and Jessica Harry just put, she in the chat room. She put the link for the membership. And if you have trouble finding it, just contact Denise or me
Great.
as well.
Happy to help.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We hope we helped a little bit, and we'll see you hopefully in the next session with Maury Bakun.
Yay. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.